All right. Whew. Didn't get as much as I had planned to get done today but we'll get there. Oh. Man, 12 hours a day of sleep is not normal. I don't think I got that much last night. I maybe got 10. But I think I'm still coming back from that cold. Oh, you're really just gunning it, aren't you? Didn't think I was loading the camera that hard. Yeah, so planning the new category of content that I'm thinking of doing. So I was looking at stuff earlier. I feel like I want to get contact with my doctors to get a sense of where the baselines are in my health and nutrition. It might be more expensive than I can make happen, so I'll have to figure that one out. But so I was looking at health and well-being category of content and thinking like I should, like, I don't eat normal. I don't eat like a normal person. I don't eat normal food because I'm so used to not being able to digest any of it. So there's a part of me that, like, I feel like I should do at least a couple weeks, if not a full month, of average American diet. I'm pretty sure that would wreck me, though. So, like, I'm thinking of average American diet, and then, okay, I was looking at average American diet, South Beach diet, paleo. Like, paleo diet, I don't know that, like, I guess I'd have to do a little more research on it. I have a sister who eats a paleo diet, and it's semi-therapeutic because it benefits her lupus. And then there's keto diets, which aren't that different from a paleo diet. And then there's the carnivore diet. And I was going to say, like, once you go down that end of the spectrum, you kind of hit the wall at carnivore. Like, what do you come back from that with? I don't know. I'll have to figure that one out. I kind of want to be able to go from one to the next relatively easily, but that might be the wrong approach, and I have to figure that out. Because, like, if I do a South Beach diet, then a paleo diet, and then a keto diet, that's 3 months of low carb. So what I'm getting on the third month of low carb eating may actually be like benefits of 3 months or deficits of 3 months on a low carb diet. Whereas if I did a low carb diet, high carb diet, low carb diet, high carb diet, alternating, you're not going to get contamination of your results. So I'm like, which way makes the more sense for me to do? And I feel like alternating may be the way to go. So I'm like, I have to start from a baseline. I have to establish my like cholesterol levels, my triglycerides, my blood pressure, my weight. Some people are not into doing the weight reports because it can negatively impact people with eating disorders. So I want to be able to get a sense of where my B vitamins and folate and those types of things are, because I know mine aren't normal, I have a genetic condition that means that I don't absorb them as well. I should probably get my vitamin D checked at the same time, because I also don't process that as well. And they are processed in a part of the intestine that I have had inflammation in the past, and it affects my ability to absorb it well. And my genes already predispose me to not being able to absorb it well. So like having that baseline on which I'm, reporting what that is then, and then what it is after I do a diet of a certain type. Like if I have to do this for every diet, that's going to get expensive quick. Got to figure out a way to maybe do that. And then I want to kind of do all of those diets. Like diet is one of the things I want to do. So like the South Beach, paleo, keto, carnivore, vegetarian, vegan, raw vegan, and are there others that I was working on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I feel like I had 9 or 10 options as diets go. What else is out there? I did this research earlier, and I should have written more down. So somebody else is saying, okay, so I'm choosing South Beach diet. I should just say low carb. So it could be like an Atkins diet, but it could be a South Beach diet. The Zone diet, ketogenic, vegetarian, vegan. Weight Watchers, South Beach, raw food, Mediterranean, and the Zone. The Zone diet. So ketogenic is pretty well known. Zone diet. The Zone diet aims for nutritional balance of 40% carbohydrates, 30% fat, and 30% protein in each meal. I could check in the Zone. Let's put that somewhere in the middle of my list. All right, so I was also like, there are some that I just out and out think are just wonky as all get out. And some of them are like the alkali diet. Just, like, I don't know why people behave that way. It's magical thinking. And I'm not really there for it. But I should not be that disparaging. Like I should be open enough to trying the diet enough to say whether or not it makes sense. The blood type diet, God, some doctors have started to research diet that coincides with a particular blood type. All right, that's another hocus pocus one, but I'll put it on the list. Blood type. Paleo, blood type, vegan, South Beach, Mediterranean. All right, fine. And my ADD and my dyslexia kicked in hard for that one. All right. Now, there's raw vegan, and then there's just raw. Now, seems to me raw should be vegan completely, because you do not want to eat a lot of raw meat, eggs. Like, you could probably get away with raw dairy. I don't know. Let me. This is a diet that places a premium on eating uncooked and unprocessed foods. The diet eliminates the intake of any food that have been pasteurized or produced with any kind of synthetic or additives. The diet is intended to create a surge in energy, a decrease in inflammation, while also lowering the number of carcinogens in one's diet. So, I mean, it sounds like it's a raw vegan. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Can we get one more in there? Alkaline was in there, but I misspelled it. I suppose I could do the average American diet as one of those and have sort of like a like an even 12. So that would be a different diet each month throughout the year. Oh, here's an interesting list. 38 popular diets, ranked best to worst. This will be fascinating to see. This sounds like it's a very inclusive list. 38, like I can't even imagine what those 38 are. Or maybe they don't, like, maybe they don't distinguish between like Atkins or they distinguish between Atkins and South Beach diet. And thus you've got all these little revampings of everybody's previous work. Okay, the DASH diet, the MIND diet, TLC diet, Weight Watchers, Mayo Clinic, fertility diet, Mediterranean diet, volumetric diet, Ornish, traditional Asians, slim fast, spark people, anti-inflammatory diet. Oh, good Lord. There's just a whole bunch of stuff I've never heard of on here. So they have like a subcategory of like Eco Atkins and raw food, which is distinct from Atkins. Whole 30. I don't know many of these. So maybe I'll copy. Are you kidding me? Why would you do that? Why would you put all of this information behind a paywall? Do you not want people to bother looking at your content? Sorry, I shouldn't talk to the screen like that. Yeah, so like I think I'll start roughly with a very simple outline of the South Beach diet, paleo, keto, carnivore, zone, vegetarian, vegan, raw vegan, alkaline, blood type. I don't know that I want to bother with the Mediterranean. I'll look at one of the other options on that list. I mean, the South Beach, like none of these are really specific to a region or culture. And like cultural diets could be like a different, like a different year of content to look into. I do know that when I had some of my first symptoms of being sick, what we did was the specific carbohydrate diet. And it was something that helped manage like I knew that a lot of my reactions to food were carbohydrate based, and so the specific carbohydrate diet was specifically targeted at people who had digestive ailments, and it benefited them. There's also FODMAP or FODMAP diet. Dr. Eric Berg. I'm going to show a little bit of my dietary health-based snobbery. I'm almost going to guarantee you that he's a chiropractor. No offense. I don't mean that like hostilely, but I have found a lot of these dietary advice doctors are not nutritionists or generally holistic, dietary educated medical professionals. So let me look them up. I shouldn't be that way without giving him a fair shot. Dr. Eric Berg. All right, so what do we got? Dr. Eric Berg. Dr. Eric Berg. I think I might have actually heard of some of his stuff in the past. And based off of some chemistry and general biological knowledge, I found some of his information. I mean, he says some things that for the general population are good information. I'll just start there. He says some good things, and like you're really not going to do any damage to yourself following most of that advice. I think the area I get very suspicious and very standoffish that when you started to get into these like mystery science mumbo jumbos and suggestions of supplements and like I have an inflammatory bowel disease, and I didn't realize how big the problem of these chiropractors walking into a medical field and giving snake oil salesman pitches of just really weird crap is. Like, I have had people tell me that the reason why I have inflammatory bowel disease is because I have, because they know it's the mercury in my fillings. No, it's not. So it's just like I've had people meaning the best telling me things about, and it's the reason why I get crabby about things like alkaline diets. Your body self-regulates that. Unless your kidneys and other organs internally are failing badly, you should not become acidic. And you should not become alkali. And what you eat should not affect that at all. If you want to make your blood more alkali, here's what you need to do. Hyperventilate. That'll turn your blood alkaline. And yet so many people are out there like telling you, don't eat tomatoes, it'll make your blood acidic, and that's why you have all that inflammation. That's not how that works. And I get like, there are so many people out there that believe that, and they mean the best. They're trying to advise you on ways that maybe can help you. but I can't tell you the number of people who told me some wishy-washy witchcraft they wanted me to try to do because they figured it would cure me of an autoimmune inflammatory disease. Like, I don't care how many times you've rubbed essential oil of something or other on you at a particular time of the month, like during a new moon or whatever, it's not going to make it so that I no longer have inflammatory bowel disease. That just doesn't work that way. And hey, if you had issues with digestion and through some placebo effect, some snake oil pitch worked for you, I'm not going to, blow you out of the water and, demand you seek psychiatric help. It works for you, go with it. But I am chronically frustrated by people who pitch like wholly unscientific facts, and when you try something like that, or like people who don't know any better fall for that, and when they don't succeed at resolving any of their symptoms, people are telling them, well, you must have done something wrong. I get very angry at that, and so that's where some of that punchback comes from. Yeah, there's a lot of trick. Like, one of the things you'll see in like, I'm sure if you watch any TV, I don't watch much TV anymore, but years ago it used to be the case that you would see these ads for male enhancement pills, and they would have their doctor expert on. And you want to guess what profession that doctor expert was in? He was a chiropractor, because it's frankly one of the easiest fields of getting a doctor's degree in, while at the same time being as open to mysticism and pseudoscience. Because honestly, if you do the research on what a chiropractor is, the history really tells you that that whole field is just rife with scams. And it's not that you can't do benefit for people with back pain through a type of hands-on therapy, but they invent terms that don't exist, and they invent conditions that they can resolve. And so it's a field that's just absolutely wide open for wishy-washiness. And not all chiropractors are scammers. Some of them legitimately believe everything they've been taught when they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go through their year or 2-year-long program to get certified as a doctor of chiropractic. And so, like, I'm always very, very conscious of, does the doctor in question have expertise of study and pure-backed results of the claims they're making? Now, I will oftentimes just hunt down through some of the sites I know. Like, I do a lot of research on science and medicine using legitimate peer-backed studies and papers that are published. Like, most of these people, when they're doing these studies, if you just ask them, they'll tell you about what they've done. If you don't have to go through like a medical journal or anything like that. You can get the information in a fair number of places that give you reasonable amounts of information. And as soon as you step out of those reasonably researched, peer-reviewed studies, you get into Wonkyville fast, really, really fast. I have had people tell me all sorts of things, like they believe that my symptoms are actually Lyme disease, which I know people who have had chronic Lyme disease, and it's a nightmare. It really messes people up. but I haven't gone walking through the woods with anything less than 3 layers on my lower half of my body or long sleeves in 20 years. And I have been tested multiple times for Lyme disease. I don't have it. And people say, like, oh, the tests always miss it. I'm like, then they wouldn't use the tests. Like, early detection can miss it about 40% of the time. And that's within a few weeks of having been bitten by it. If you've had it for more than 3 years, it's not going to miss it. There are a lot of false positives. There are a lot of false negatives. But I always have my BS detector on, and it kicks on hardcore when somebody says, oh, you probably have this condition. Most tests will never detect that you have it, and most treatments that they have for it won't get rid of it. You have to go through these specialists who are not certified MDs. They don't have a, just like, you're preying on the susceptible. And now Lyme disease is one of those cases where, like, if you've had it long term, it's a savage brute to try to get rid of. But there is a recommended course of treatment that you take one of 2 specialty types of antibiotic, antiparasitic drugs. You take a regular run of that, you go off it, and Lyme disease has a tendency to have a spore. The spore is protected when it's dormant, and the main illness, you may get rid of them all, and then a few weeks later, when your system's clear of the danger, the spores hatch into another round of it. So what they do is they've done studies that indicate that the first batch, to wipe out the first active level of it, wait a period, I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks, for the next cycle of its life cycle to kick in and those spores to come out. And then you hit them, back off, hit them, and so you're pulsing your dose. So every time you get a life cycle that starts on them, you kill all the living ones. You go back into the spores, give them a chance to hatch, and you just cycle enough of it, and you should be able to clear them out. Now, that's been shown to be relatively successful. I don't know how far into if you're like 30 or 40 years into a chronic Lyme infection, I don't know to what degree you'll get tissue infiltration of the parasite, and to what degree that protects it from treatment. And that's me as somebody who's researched the topic for people I know. And I've researched it through papers and documentation that are done through studies and laboratory funded and peer-reviewed work. There are people out there who will tell you that Lyme disease can be sexually transmitted. It cannot. There are people out there who tell you that mosquitoes can carry it. They may be able to catch it from somebody who has it, but they cannot serve as a host of it to transmit it to a future host. They don't have the means to do that. So they are not a known vector for transporting Lyme disease. And so, like, there are people out there who will try to convince you can get it from everywhere. Nobody will be able to detect it, and the current treatments don't work for it. To me, that's the snake oil salesman's dream illness. You can't find it, you can't treat it, and you can get it from anything. That's right there. That's my, like, sets off all the BS bells. And so I'm always super conscious of that. And it's one of those, I'm very, very careful about passing on information about that kind of thing. And, like, if you do an alkaline diet and it works for you for whatever you're trying to do, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I'm going to tell you what the science says. I'm going to tell you my personal experience if I try it. And like, so that's part of what I'm looking to mainly do with some of the health and well-being stuff. I think it's worthwhile to try each of these things. Like, I know from experience, I've done it before. South Beach diet, one of the reasons I put it on this list. When I was younger, I was very heavy. I was close to 300 pounds when I was out of high school. And like, I ate a chicken breast and a serving of rice and a big plate of vegetables at 2 meals a day. And I still got heavy. And I had a very sedentary lifestyle, so that was part of it. But I could go for a 3-mile walk and come back, and I wasn't done in. It was just a walk for me, and so like. But I did have issues with high blood pressure, and I had issues with high levels of cholesterol, and my triglycerides were very high. And I talked with one of my doctors who was not a good doctor, in my opinion, when I was younger. And they're like, well, you need to cut the fat in your diet. Well, here's the thing. The leaner my diet got, the more my diet included more carbohydrates to compensate for the fat I was getting in my diet, wasn't getting in my diet. And your body needs those fats to do healthy skin and those sorts of things. So I actually did develop a skin condition around that time too. But I lost about 10, 15 pounds, and everyone was like, see, this is what happens when you cut the fat from your diet. I lost it within the first 3 weeks. I gained it all back plus more later, staying on that diet. And for a very long time, it was like, your triglycerides are getting worse, your cholesterol is getting worse, you have chronic heartburn, and I ended up at one point, I don't know how it happened. I think my mom, was it my mom? I can't even remember who recommended the South Beach diet. It was sort of a fad at the time that was going widespread. And I went, all right, I'll give this a go. And I went from 286 pounds down to 200 in 3 months. My blood pressure was normal. It went down to normal. My cholesterol, my good cholesterol went up, my bad cholesterol went down. They were closer together, which is healthier. And my triglycerides went from high to normal. My heartburn mostly went away. I looked better. I had more energy. And it flabbergasted everybody who knew me. They saw the change and it was like, holy crap, you lost 80-something odd pounds. Are you starving yourself? No. I was eating 3 meals a day. They were healthy meals. They had a lot of eggs. Everybody's like, eggs are unsafe. And it's like, well, no, I ate a fair amount of eggs and did a fair amount of cheese. The thing I wouldn't do if I do it again is the sugar-free chocolates. I'm pretty sure those really did not help my digestive problems. But in the long run, like, I know that I react a certain way to carbohydrate. Now, that may not be how everybody reacts to them. And so, like, part of one of the things I need to really think about doing for if I do dietary episodes, they're going to be, I'm going to get, I did a little research back when I was ill and couldn't eat carbohydrates and ended up 40 pounds underweight. one of the things I had to keep track of, not because I'm diabetic, but because I needed to see how my body was handling and processing certain foods. I got a blood sugar meter. And so I tested regularly, and I learned to, identify, like when I got up in the morning, for a lot of people, there's an early morning spike in your blood sugar, even when you haven't eaten yet. So a fasting blood sugar, when you first wake up, your body jolts that level higher in the early part of the morning. And then later in the day, it settles back into a median level of normal. That's why when doing blood sugar testing, getting your A1C tested is a more accurate, because it's testing inside the metabolic processes, what the cycles of your A1C have been over a 3-month period of time, roughly. So it's sort of getting you the average picture of what your blood sugar management has looked like for 3 months, roughly 3 to 6 months. It's a better measure of your control over your blood sugar. And so, like, being able to check my blood sugar, check my insulin levels in my blood, being able to check my blood pressure, my oxygenation, my I may have to, like, the tricky part is going to be getting like cholesterol levels tested. My B12 and my folate should be tested, because I know I don't process them well as my vitamin D. And those are all tests that are going to be more expensive to get done. And I kind of wish there were easier ways to test a few other things that are important to do, like the BMI, the body mass index, is wishy-washy in its own ways. A lot of fitness people, like, that's how you measure how much your body fat, how much of your body is fat and lean muscle and whatever. Because you can be thin and have almost no muscle and mostly like subcutaneous and visceral fat. Visceral fat is what wraps around your organs. And so you can have higher levels of that than is healthy, but be so thin because you don't have bulky muscle mass underneath of it, and it's not a bulky fat that you have, that you can actually have issues of being overweight when you're at the right weight. And so it's just sort of like, if you think about it, it makes sense, where you can have, like, your body has muscle, bone, organs, fat, and your levels of those, like, you can't say somebody at 6'4" who works out regularly, if they're 200 pounds, they're overweight. Because the fitness level could very well be that's predominantly lean muscle. And how do you measure lean muscle? Well, there's no real, like, simple way to do that. That's not an expensive test. There are ways to measure some amount of what is your fat level. And there are ways to do it that use, like, ultrasound, because there are different densities in fat versus muscle. And so it's like, but again, you're talking about, high-end testing. And I always feel like, if I were to do these, my ideal way of doing these tests of these diets would be to get everything tested and measured as highly detailed as I can get it, and as accurately as I can get it. Because, like, the BMI stuff, where you're like, I'm 6'2", and then put my weight on, and then, like, I think there's a couple other, like, 1 or 2 other factors that you're supposed to calculate. I think it's like your daily activity level, and then you do some math, and it tells you how much body fat content you should have. And that's just like, if all things were functioning right, this is how this would work. But we have since looked at things like the human microbiome, which I have had my gut microbiome tested because I have a bowel disease. I wanted to get a sense of what my levels of different microorganisms were. But we've since discovered that different microbiomes, different genetics working together behave differently according to the diet they're on. So you can have one person who can sit down and have a massive bowl of ice cream, and it won't affect their blood sugar level negatively, and it won't as easily be stored as body fat. Whereas somebody else, their blood insulin just spikes and their blood sugar skyrockets, and then they go through a sugar crash after a bowl of ice cream. And some of that's microbiome, some of that's genetics, and some of it is general fitness and well-being. And so, like, it would be really cool if I could, more scientifically get as much data as possible before I start this, and then after each diet, do a test to see the change achieved in a month, and then take a break for a month and achieve standard level that I started at before starting the next one, so you don't cross-contaminate between results. Because I can tell you, things like your B12 in your diet, like you could go a whole month not getting any B12 in your diet, and you should probably be okay. Go 3 or 4 months like that, you're going to start to see problems. And go 6 to 8 months, and you start to have panic attacks and high cortisol levels and the inability to flush the regular buildup of, I don't want to say toxins because that's another keyword for a lot of pseudoscience BS. But your body has ability to flush out and work through just the general accumulation of damage and stresses it gets over the course of time. And it has an ability to break those down into things that can flush out of your body. Now, for somebody with me, with my genetics, I have one genetic marker out of, I think, potentially 4 that decrease how efficient I am at doing that. So for me, a diet that has things like seafood and beef and lentils is important because it actually bolsters my intake of those things. I also have difficulty processing vitamin D. So again, higher doses of those kinds of things in my diet, or in the case of vitamin D, more sun exposure may be beneficial for me. Now, if you don't have that genetic condition or microbiome condition or chronic digestive ailment like I have, you don't need to do some of the things I need to do to maintain a healthy norm. So being able to say where you're starting from, things that you have to manage, and the result of those things would be really nice to be able to do. It'd be also great to have more than like a sample size of one. Like, it would be nice to have a group of friends, each with differences, and seeing how different people respond to said diet. Now, that's just me being like the science nerd that I am. I have to remind myself, these are YouTube videos. Like, this is not a science documentary or a published medical journal work. So, like, it's going to be not perfect, and it's going to be a little rough. but I'd still like to be able to get as much data as I can doing this. Now, diet is one of the categories of things I want to do in health and well-being. Now, I started that category early on my channel as edited content that were a little psychological tools that you can use if you have anxiety and depression. These are tricks that I've figured out for myself when I was younger. And like, I wouldn't mind doing mental health exercises or things like that. And speaking of exercises, I also want to do exercise routines, different types of exercise and how they may benefit your health and well-being, as well as I've wanted to do a few things like sleep cycles and how they may benefit or harm you if you're not careful. So like, I want to test some of these things. The trick is, like, I'm impatient, and if I'm doing 12 diet tests over the next year, I don't want to cross-contaminate any results with sleep changes or exercise changes. Because if I do something that's a sleep change and I'm eating a raw vegan diet and I feel tired all the time, is it because the diet is not providing something I need? Or is it because I'm not getting the right sleep that my body needs? Or because I'm working out too much and my muscles are exhausted and I need more protein in my diet because of the exercise, but the raw vegan diet is lower protein than a low carb diet or a carnivore diet would be higher protein. And if my blood sugar changes during the course of a month in a way that's spiking, but I'm on a carnivore diet, is that because my body's turning the proteins from meats, processing them more efficiently through the liver into blood sugar raises? Or is that indicative of a strain on my pancreas? Like, I don't want to cross-contaminate my tests with each other. So I'm debating like the best format to go on from here. I feel like I said early on, I don't think doing a South Beach diet, which is a low-carb diet, followed by a paleo, which is a low-carb diet, followed by a keto, which is a low-carb diet, followed by a carnivore diet, which is a low-carb diet, makes a lot of sense, because month 4, you may be seeing results of 3.5 months of low carb rather than the results of carnivore specifically. And I feel like there is a high carb diet too, isn't there? Yeah, I'll put that on the people who eat nothing but fruits and potatoes for like a month. I don't understand it, but I'm willing to try to understand it. But so yeah, I feel like for dietary changes, I have to have sort of like I do it for a month. I take like a week palate cleanser at the end, and just sort of take the time to reset to normal before starting a completely different diet, not one that's parallel or similar. And then I feel like during those periods of testing out different diets, I should use the same baseline fitness routine, either completely sedentary or at least have a regular routine I can stick to, and that'll be the same throughout all the tests, so as not to give misleading information to the rest of the tests. And I should probably not do any sleep changes. So I think it makes more sense to start out establishing a routine for health, or healthy sleeping, and a routine for healthy exercise as a base. Establish a healthy base diet that I will revert to between diet tests. And I may end up choosing to do a diet change, like a different diet every other month rather than every month, to give space between them. Seems like a lot. And if I do it that way, I have to think about, like, can I do a fitness change at any point? Or do I, like, because if I do every other month with the dietary differences, with 12 diets baseline to explore, that's 2 years of content for diets. And all that 2 years, I have to stick to the same fitness and health routines outside of diet. This is turning into a big project, isn't it? So I may actually end up starting with an exercise routine first, just trying different exercise routines with my base diet. Find an exercise routine. Well, and it would. That's sort of why I'm thinking, like, taking a month in between. Because for the most part, you have a few different things about your diet. Like eating, if you were to start a low carb diet today, if you were to do like the South Beach diet starting today, and if you're struggling with blood sugar and weight issues, I actually can recommend from my own experience talking with your doctor, and you can, I swear, anywhere in the US, if you go to a Goodwill or a Salvation Army, in their used book section, you will find for $1 to $4 a copy of the South Beach diet. They've got recipes you can make that are low carb foods. It'll help you start to learn how to regulate your blood sugar better. And it may drastically benefit you if you're on the cusp of potentially needing medications to regulate your blood sugar or insulin. Because it was originally crafted as a diet by a doctor who managed people with prediabetes and diabetes. And so it was something that he found benefited them drastically. I know from personal experience that I lost weight and had better cholesterol and blood pressure as well. So I mean, it's not going to hurt you to eat that way. It's a little tricky if you're trying to make the recipes in the book, but if you use them to inform what you're doing, like a chef salad with some poultry, eggs, and cheese on it, instead of some big complicated recipe that they have in the book, that'd work. 2 eggs with maybe a slice of ham in the morning, a chef salad for lunch, and like a plate of vegetables with some beef or pork or fish for dinner, and like maybe a side salad. And throughout the day, maybe a few simple things like nuts or vegetables for snacks if you need them. That would get you pretty much on the South Beach diet right away without having to build like complicated recipes. The recipes in the book oftentimes are really just meant to show like you can have gourmet foods and not feel deprived, while eating better for you. But if you were to go on the South Beach diet right now, you're probably going to lose about 10 pounds within the first week, week and a half. And most of that's going to be water weight. When you have regular ingestion of carbohydrates in your diet, carbohydrates, in order to go through your system, also need to be sort of paired with water. And they're often higher in salt level, which also pairs with water. And so your body takes in 2 to 3 times as much water with a higher carbohydrate intake than without it. So when you cut carbohydrates, your body starts to filter all that out through the kidneys. And so you pee it all away, and then like you're like, wow, I lost 10 pounds in a week and a half. Sorta. I mean, you lost 10 pounds of water. And if you a lot of people go on these diets and they're like, well, I lost so much in the first week, I'll just keep going. And then like week 2 and 3, they barely lose anything because you've already lost all the water, the excess water at that point. Now, looking at diets like keto diet, like you sort of have to give it 3 weeks. Your body's not going to be able to adapt to the increase in fat that you're taking in a week. Like people who like, I'm going to try keto for a week. Like, then I don't need to see what you're going to do because you're not going to get reasonable results. It takes 3 to 7 days. It's usually like 3 to 5 days for most people's digestive changes to occur, and those changes to affect the metabolism oftentimes takes a week longer. So like changes in a diet will take weeks to really show the benefits to them. So a lot of these people doing like 3 days to a week change in diet, like the only thing you're really going to notice in the first couple of days is if you're not getting enough calories, you're going to feel tired all the time. And if you're like getting 500 calories a day, you're essentially mimicking fasting, and you're going to feel it. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be cranky. You're going to be tired. You're going to feel weak. Which one? South Beach diet? Yeah, it's it's one of those things. Like it has multiple phases. It has a phase 1, which is like a very, very low carbohydrate diet. It has a phase 2, which is moderately low carbohydrates. And then phase 3 is meant to be something that you can do sustainably for the rest of your life if you want to. So you can continue to do phase 3 indefinitely, or sometimes you can skip, like go to a family gathering and they have like Christmas treats and you binge or whatever on that day. You can go back to phase 3, or you can restart the whole process if you want. But Phase 3 is meant to be a sustainably livable change to the way you eat. But yeah, so like the different diets that are out there, you don't want to, like, a real bad choice would be to go South Beach diet, paleo, keto, carnivore. Because South Beach diet is low carb, paleo is low carb, keto is low carb, and not only will it confuse your results from 1 month to the next, but low carb diets on a heavy level, like the carnivore diet is like only meat. You don't eat anything else. You could probably do okay for a month to 3 months on that before you're starting to suffer potential problems from those. Like you're missing things that are important to your body. But a healthy person who's not suffering from some big problems in certain areas has enough reserves. Like our ancestors and ourselves, we have the ability to starve for, I think the total they said was probably about 6 or 7 weeks before you do hardcore damage to your body. And there's somebody somewhere on YouTube, I forget who, there was this big thing that showed up a while back where somebody did they drank only water for, I want to say it was like a little over a month. Your body can do that if you handle it carefully. So, like changes in your diet to a certain degree, they're not going to have a huge evil impact on your body. They're not going to be as bad for you as like some people think. Like if you skip a meal 3 times a week, are you making yourself sick? It's like your body's way more resilient than that, usually. Unless you have a chronic health condition. If you're diabetic and you're skipping meals, you may be really not doing good things to your blood sugar level throughout the day. But your body's usually resilient enough to be able to go through cycles like that. And like a prime example of that is most of our ancestors would, when fall or autumn came around, like that was when you harvested everything. And then by the time spring was coming around, you're on your last bit of rations. And so like a lot of the vegetables that have some of the higher nutrients, they're gone by now. And so like early spring, it's one of the reasons like dandelions were a popular, like we brought them to the United States because you can eat the dandelion greens. You can actually use the shoots and the roots. You can make the roots, you can use the roots almost like a carrot. And you can also use it like a coffee substitute. But the dandelion has very high vitamin C. Most of our vitamin C in our diet comes from things like potatoes, carrots, and mostly fruits. And fruits don't generally last all winter in storage. So early spring, those dandelions popping up early, they were a godsend because they meant people weren't going to start to suffer scurvy from a long winter. But you could go months on low levels of vitamin C. Low to no levels incoming and living off the reserves that your body built up. And the same applies to most of your other nutrients. There's some things that are water soluble that your body takes in a day and then flushes out in a day. And then there's some that are fat soluble that you take in and they build up in your system. Like a vitamin A, like vitamin A is something that like it builds up and it takes a while to go away. B12 is one of those. If you get your levels up to a healthy level, it can take sometimes more than a year before it's noticeably low. And the first sign you're going to see of that is anemic. You're going to be anemic. So, like, tweaking your diet on a month-to-month basis isn't too bad. When you're with digestive upset with dietary changes, because like if you go from like a high carbohydrate diet to a keto diet, the massive switch from high fiber to high fat, oh, you're going to have bathroom issues, at least for the first week or week and a half. It's just the nature of like your biome is adjusting to the dietary changes, and you can shock it and you can stress your system doing too much, too fast, too hard. But like that's sort of the reason I'm looking at the possibility of like, I don't want to go the same type of diet long term. And I also feel like there should be a break between each diet for a week or two, maybe even upwards of a month between them. But yeah, I think what I need to do first is establish a healthy exercise routine, healthy sleeping pattern, and use those as my base for what I'm doing. And then based off of that, try a different diet every month and resort back to a base diet in between. I think diet, exercise, and mental health tactics are the three I think I probably want to do here on this channel. I may do productivity and sleeping and some of those mind hacks on a different channel because I don't know that that's pertinent to what I want to do for health and well-being. And to be honest, between diet, exercise, and mental health, and having 6 to 12 of each category to be able to do content with, I've got more than enough to go for a few years. So I think that's what I need to do. I need to figure out different exercise routines. Yeah, well, there is that. And like, I guess I would almost call myself middle-aged at this point. I mean, I kind of have to, because given American life expectancies at what they are, I'm halfway there, roughly. So I guess I constitute middle-aged. Like, I might be able to see if I can enlist a friend. The hard part of it is, like, I've got some younger friends and I've got some older friends. I have a friend of mine, an older fellow who's, I think, starting into his 60s. And like, he needs to make some changes for his own benefit. Most of these things, they should be good for pretty much everybody. Exercise routines might be a little hard. If you're not a very fit person, but like, I think the trick to some of that is like exercise routines. Like, I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not a weightlifter, so I'm not like muscle bound. And so a lot of strength training work will be hard on my body. Whereas a 60-year-old person who does a lot of physical activity regularly, they'll have an easier time than me. And by the same token, like there are some things metabolically, like as you get older, you're just going to have increased risk of prediabetes and insulin insensitivity. That's just, it's what the body does as it gets older. But there are ways to handle some of that. I think for most of what we're looking at, diet-wise and exercise-wise, you should be able to do most of anything that I would end up doing. And if you can't do it fully what I'm doing, um, you could do it part of the way. Like you could do a half. Like if you're not fit enough to do some of the exercises I do, instead of 10 push-ups, do 3 or 5. Oh, so you probably have some breathing concerns. And where that might come into play would be something like a highly aerobic exercise. It's going to strain your breathing and heart rate. And aerobic exercise is beneficial for you. There may be ways. I mean, that's the thing is, I can't make a series that's one size fits all and expect that people won't have to find ways to adapt it to their own needs. Now, with cooking recipes, there's like conversions where like how many ounces in a cup, and I think there has to be potentially a conversion sort of menu for anything I do. So if I end up doing like a high impact cardiovascular routine, it may make more sense for certain members of the population who couldn't physically do that to opt in on doing like a half-hour walk. And, again, I'm not going to preach it like I'm a doctor, so everybody should start at the easy level with the, advice of their physician. If somebody's been a chronic smoker for 50 years, they're going to have a harder time with aerobics. If somebody has been sedentary all their lives, they're going to have a higher risk of tearing muscles or ligaments until they've built the strength up to support them when they're doing exercises. That's just, I mean, like, I know, I'm relatively lucky in the sense that for sometimes like half a year, I'm very sedentary. And then every now and then I'll get a job that's like a canvassing for an organization. It's like, okay, go for a 6-mile walk today and come back and tell us how everything went. Like that first day that I do that, I hurt for like 3 days afterwards. The second day I do it, I hurt for like a day afterwards. And I usually space it. So my first day, I have 2 days or 3 days afterwards. And then the next day I work, I have like 2 days afterwards. And then the next day I work, it's every other day. And I give myself every other day so that I can recuperate between those days. And by the end of like a month of doing that, I could literally go for a 6-mile walk every day. And it wouldn't even faze me. But I mean, I start in slow. I build myself up to a point where I can do a thing. But even the way I do it is pushing too hard, too fast, really. Like, as I get older, I'm going to have to give myself slower starts, more gradual buildups, and longer breaks between. That's just the way it's going to work. And knowing that, like, anything that I do fitness-wise or diet change-wise, I should give, when I start them, advice on how to start slow and build. Oh yeah, gout sucks, man. Hiatal hernia, eh. Like I have a small hiatal hernia that has been really bad in the past and has resolved with some of the health and fitness things that I've done. But like part of that is this like hiatal hernia can be affected by visceral fat, so that's the fat that wraps around your organs, and any fat buildup around the middle is sort of like wearing a huge rubber band that's squeezing your middle. Now, you may think it's bulging out, and it may be to a certain degree, but it's also bulging in, and it's squishing things and forcing them into an unnatural position. And that's where some of that hiatal hernia can be irritated. But I found definitely when I lost that 80 some odd pounds the first time I did the low carb diet, that most of my acid reflux that I had daily, and it hurt bad. Like you could feel it. You could go like, oh, here comes a flare. Because like, I swear I could feel that opening at the top of my stomach open slightly. And then you could feel like something sloshing around when I moved around. And I'm like, oh, that's going to start to sting real soon here. And then it does. It bites. It starts to burn real bad. And it hurts. And it's just like, it's a searing like nightmare. And it happened after every meal, every day for years. And then I lost all that weight. And I got a little bit more fit by moving around and building muscle. And like uh, building back muscle and abdominal muscles to a fitter level helps immensely. And, knock on wood, for the last 15 years, I've only had like 12 episodes of heartburn, and I know what caused that because I ate stupid things before I had that issue. Like when I had the mukbangs that I did on this channel, the eating huge amounts of food, and some of the foods I ate were super spicy. So of course, for the next day, I had a few episodes of heartburn. That's not a surprise to me. Yeah, they prescribed me over the counter, I want to say Prilosec, for a couple of years when I was a teenager because I had it so bad. They were worried that I was going to get ulcers or esophageal cancer because I was having so much scarring forming from how much reflux I had. But I don't take anything now, and I don't have any acid reflux. Now, when we went in for endoscopy, the last time I went in, it was a colonoscopy endoscopy. I got it from both ends. So the last time I went in for that, they did a look, and they said, like, you have a little bit of a hiatal hernia, but it's like it's not doing anything to you right now. And I had a little heartburn after the endoscopy because it had irritated the area around it, which caused hiccups and weakening of the muscle at the top of the stomach for like a few days or a week or so. And so it made me more susceptible to heartburn. But like for the most part, I don't have issues. But I also don't eat a normal American diet. And endoscopy, like you're out for it. The endoscopy is not a problem. The colonoscopy isn't really a problem either. The biggest problem with both of those is the prep beforehand. And that's just because like nobody likes to go through an entire day of using the bathroom and then the next day don't eat anything all day. It's not a fun experience. But it's also not a really horrific one. I've been way sicker and had worse experiences from bad food. And it barely even compares. But yeah. So that's where I'm working on right now, is just kind of figuring out like this new category of stuff that I might want to do here. Is I do think it makes more sense to do the fitness ones first, and the mental health ones I can do kind of whenever. Diet's not going to affect that overly much, and exercise might affect it a little bit, but I might end up doing 4 to 6 months of fitness routine testing, maybe even 8 months. I don't know. I'll have to look at what options I need to do for that. I'll have to look that up. I'll talk about that maybe tomorrow. And then once I find a fitness routine that I'm pretty certain I can stick with, that's the one I'm going to stay with. Then I'll do all of those using a standard base diet. And then once I've got my fitness setup figured out, I will do the various diets on alternating months. And I think I'll probably alternate 1 month a dietary change, 1 month a mental health routine. See if I can help myself. I mean, I don't have a lot of things that I need to resolve right now. I mean, I still have anxiety and depression sometimes, but it's not as aggressive as it was years ago, or even 2 years ago, where I had a lot of things hit me in life. But testing out some mental health routines, maybe in between the dietary experiments. And at that rate, that's 2 years of diet and mental health testing, and half a year, maybe a little more than half a year of exercise routine testing. And then, that's 2.5 years of content right there. So I'm not usually planning that far ahead. But yeah, that's plenty to explore, I think. All right, so tomorrow I guess I'll try to figure out fitness routines and stuff, and maybe mental health, or maybe I'll hold that off till the day after tomorrow. I need to update and post book review, and then tomorrow I think I'm doing a movie review. I totally forgot that I had watched those 2 movies on my flight back from Honolulu with the intent of doing the reviews of those. So I'll do my book review for the one I read before I left. I will do 2 movie reviews for the 2 movies I watched, and possibly Captain Marvel in the next few days. And then I will try to read a couple books in the meantime. And then I got 3 board games that I need to do. I've got the taste tests set aside, got a few things I can do for products and services. And if I do what I need to do right, by the end of the month, I should have 3 months worth of content for edited, posted content to post. And that should get me enough leeway that I can build up a bigger cushion, so that when I am traveling, the edited content is stuff I've recorded before June. And it also gives me a little cushion to be able to work on the other channel and the daily live content for this one. So I think that's the plan for the next few days. So I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Hope your health improves. And are we working tonight? There we go. All right. Wow.